a white woman adopted a black boy and provided him with a loving, caring environment. Many years later, the boy came across an old photograph from his childhood. In the heart of Burundi, a small nation in East Africa, life pulsed to the rhythm of drums and children's laughter. However, beneath the apparent calm, the scars of civil war and ethnic conflicts had not yet fully healed. In this context, in a humble home on the outskirts of Bujumbura, the capital, Manuel was born a child destined to face extraordinary challenges. From the moment he opened his eyes, Manuel captivated his parents, Santino and Lupita, with his deep gaze and angelic smile. However, something about his appearance caught attention. His skin was speckled with white patches, contrasting with the dark tone he inherited from his parents. The doctors diagnosed Manuel with vitiligo, a condition that depigments the skin in certain areas. In a society where superstition and prejudice still prevailed, Manuel's appearance soon became the subject of whispers and disdainful looks. The neighbors called him the devil's child, believing his condition was a divine punishment or a sign of evil. Santino, a man of great compassion, embraced his wife as they watched Manuel play innocently in his crib. Lupita, our son is a gift from heaven, no matter what others say, he affirmed with conviction. Lupita nodded, wiping away a furtive tear. We will protect him from the cruelty of the world, my love. Manuel will grow up surrounded by love and acceptance. Manuel's early years were spent in a cocoon of love and protection, with his parents serving as a shield against external intolerance. Santino and Lupita ensured their son felt valued and special, celebrating each of his achievements and consoling him in moments of sadness. However, the shadow of civil war soon loomed over Burundi, bringing death and destruction. Santino, in an act of bravery, decided to join the peace forces to protect his family and community. Before departing, he hugged Manuel tightly and whispered in his ear, "My son, you are stronger than you think. Your heart is your greatest treasure, never let anyone make you feel less for being different." With tears in her eyes, Lupita watched her husband leave, clinging to the hope that he would return safe and sound. But fate had other plans. Weeks later, they received the devastating news Santino had died in an armed confrontation, defending the ideals of peace and justice he believed in. What if this loss was just the beginning of Manuel's incredible journey? Manuel's world crumbled with the loss of his father. Lupita, engulfed in deep pain, struggled to stay strong for her son. However, the stress and grief weakened her health, and she soon fell gravely ill. On her deathbed, Lupita caressed Manuel's face and said with a trembling voice, "My sweet boy, never forget how much your father and I loved you. Your difference makes you special, not less valuable. Promise me you will be brave and fight for your dreams, no matter the obstacles you encounter." With a broken heart but with determination born from his parents' love, Manuel nodded between sobs, "I promise, Mom. I will be brave like Dad, and I will never forget how much you loved me." Thus, at the tender age of 5, Manuel found himself alone in a world that seemed not to understand him. After his parents' death, Manuel was taken in by his uncle, Afonso, the only living relative he had left. Afonso, a bitter and resentful man, saw Manuel as a burden imposed by circumstances. Far from offering comfort and affection to the orphan child, Afonso took out his frustration and anger on him. Afonso's house, located in an impoverished neighborhood of Bujumbura, became a gloomy and oppressive place for Manuel. The peeling walls and dilapidated furniture reflected the emotional decay that reigned in the home. Manuel, used to the love and warmth of his parents, found himself in a hostile and unfamiliar environment. Afonso, with his penetrating gaze and harsh voice, addressed Manuel with disdain, "Look what we have here, the cursed child." He spat the words with contempt. "Your parents left you as a burden to me, as if I didn't have enough problems." Manuel, with tears in his eyes, tried to explain, "Uncle, I didn't ask for this. I just want you to love me like my parents did." But Afonso, blinded by his own misery, couldn't see beyond his resentment. "Love you? Why should I love a child marked by the devil? Your appearance is a curse, and you will only bring misfortune to this house." Afonso's cruel words pierced Manuel's heart like sharp daggers. The child sought refuge in the dark corners of the house, finding solace in his own thoughts and memories of his parents. Could music hold the key to Manuel's survival? It was in these moments of solitude that Manuel discovered an extraordinary gift: music. Any word he heard, even the most hurtful ones, transformed into melodies in his mind. It was as if his brain was connected to an invisible symphony that only he could perceive. Music became Manuel's escape, his secret refuge where he could forget the pain and sadness. He softly hummed the melodies that formed in his head, creating an internal world where beauty and harmony reigned over cruelty and rejection. However, Manuel's presence in Afonso's house became increasingly unbearable for the bitter man. The sight of the child with vitiligo constantly reminded him of his own miseries and failures, and the music Manuel created in silence only fueled his resentment. One day, Afonso reached his limit. With a cold and determined look, he grabbed Manuel by the arm and dragged him out of the house. "I can't stand your presence here anymore," he growled. "You are a curse and a burden. It's time for you to go." Manuel, with a broken heart, pleaded, "Please, uncle, don't throw me out. I have nowhere to go. I promise to be good and not cause you any trouble." But Afonso, with a cruel smile, responded, "I don't care where you go, just get out of my sight. A child like you doesn't deserve a home." With those ruthless words, Afonso pushed Manuel onto the streets of Bujumbura, condemning him to an uncertain fate. Manuel, with tears streaming down his cheeks, clung to the music in his mind as his only solace. He knew he would have to be strong and brave, just as his parents had taught him, to survive in a world that seemed to have no place for him. As he wandered aimlessly through the dusty streets, Manuel promised himself that he would not let his uncle's cruelty define his life. He would find a way to move forward, to make his parents proud, and to prove that his difference was not a curse but a strength that would drive him to achieve great things. Abandoned to his fate on the streets of Bujumbura, Manuel wandered aimlessly, seeking refuge and comfort. The scorching African sun punished his mottled skin, while hunger and thirst took over his small body. In the midst of his despair, destiny guided him to the doors of a ruined orphanage, a place that would become his new home and his greatest challenge. The orphanage, a decrepit building with peeling walls and broken windows, housed dozens of children who, like Manuel, had been struck by tragedy and abandonment. However, far from being a welcoming refuge, the place was ruled by the cruelty and negligence of the caregivers, who saw the orphans as an unwanted burden. When Manuel crossed the threshold of the orphanage, he was met with looks of disdain and malicious whispers. The other children, influenced by society's superstitions and prejudices, pointed at him and mocked his appearance. "Look, it's the devil's child," they whispered between cruel laughs. "His skin is cursed. Don't go near him, or you'll catch his curse." Manuel, with a heavy heart, tried to ignore the taunts and insults. He took refuge in a corner of the courtyard, hugging his knees and closing his eyes, trying to escape the reality surrounding him. In those moments, the music in his mind became more intense, more vivid, like a balm for his wounded soul. The days in the orphanage were a constant struggle for survival. The food was scarce and of poor quality, and the caregivers showed no compassion for the children's needs. Manuel, with his resilient spirit, learned to fend for himself, finding solace in the darkest corners and taking advantage of every opportunity to feed and protect himself. Despite the adversities, Manuel did not lose hope. Every night, before sleeping on the hard floor of his shared room, he closed his eyes and evoked the loving faces of his parents. "Mom, Dad, I know you are with me in spirit," he whispered in the darkness. "You gave me the strength to face any challenge. I will not let you down." Music became Manuel's escape, his way of transcending the walls of the orphanage and the disdainful looks of others. He hummed soft melodies while performing the most arduous tasks, finding comfort in the notes that floated in his mind. It was his secret, his most precious treasure, and he knew that someday that music would take him to a better place. One day, while Manuel was lost in his thoughts, a new boy arrived at the orphanage. His name was Diego, a boy with a defiant look and an indomitable spirit. Unlike the others, Diego was not influenced by gossip and prejudice. He saw a gentle soul in Manuel and approached him with a warm smile. "Hi, I'm Diego," he introduced himself firmly. "Don't pay attention to what the others say. I see a brave and special boy in you." Manuel, surprised by Diego's kindness, gave a shy smile. "Thank you, Diego. I'm Manuel. It's good to have a friend here." In the midst of the darkness and despair that enveloped the orphanage, Diego's arrival was like a ray of light in Manuel's life. That boy, with a defiant look and an indomitable spirit, quickly became his confidant, his ally, and his best friend. Together, they found the strength to face daily challenges and dream of a better future. Diego, with his rebellious character and sense of justice, quickly earned the respect of the other children at the orphanage. His imposing presence and determination to defend the weaker ones made him a natural leader. When the abusive caregivers tried to mistreat Manuel or other children, Diego bravely stepped in, willing to take the blows and punishments in their place. "I won't let them hurt you, Manuel," Diego said firmly, wiping the tears from his friend's face. "You are my brother, and brothers protect each other." Moved by Diego's loyalty, Manuel felt his heart filled with gratitude and affection. For the first time since his parents' death, he experienced the warmth of true friendship, an unbreakable bond that gave him the strength to move forward. Together, Manuel and Diego became an inseparable team. During the day, they worked side by side on the orphanage's chores, sharing laughs and confidences while washing dishes or sweeping the dusty floors. In moments of rest, they sneaked into the farthest corners of the courtyard, where Manuel shared his passion for music with his friend. "Listen to this, Diego," Manuel said enthusiastically, humming a melody that had been swirling in his head. "It's a song I composed for you, for our friendship." Diego, amazed by Manuel's talent, encouraged him to keep creating and to never give up on his dreams. "Someday, Manuel, the whole world will hear your music. You will be a great artist." But life in the orphanage was not easy, and moments of happiness were fleeting. The caregivers, frustrated and resentful of their own lives, took out their anger on the defenseless children. Manuel, with his unique appearance, remained the main target of bullying and abuse. One day, while Manuel was sweeping the courtyard, a group of older boys approached him with malicious looks. "Look at the devil's child," they mocked, pushing him to the ground. "Why don't you get out of here? No one wants you, freak." Manuel, with tears in his eyes, tried to defend himself, but the boys were stronger. Just when he thought all was lost, Diego appeared like a whirlwind, throwing himself at the aggressors with uncontrollable fury. "Leave him alone, cowards," Diego shouted, delivering blows and kicks left and right. "If you touch my friend again, you'll have to deal with me." The boys, surprised by Diego's ferocity, fled in terror, leaving Manuel trembling on the ground. Diego knelt beside his friend and hugged him tightly, conveying all his support and affection. From that moment on, their friendship became even more solid and unbreakable. They became each other's strength, the unconditional support that allowed them to survive in that hostile place. Amid the chaos and cruelty that reigned in the orphanage, Manuel also found an unexpected ray of hope in the figure of Miss Isabel, a middle-aged woman with warm eyes and a kind smile. Isabel was one of the few people in that place who treated the children with compassion and respect, seeing in them the potential that others refused to recognize. Miss Isabel was especially moved by Manuel's story and his passion for music. She herself had dreamed of being an artist in her youth, but life's circumstances had taken her down different paths. In Manuel, she saw a reflection of her own lost dreams and set out to do everything possible to help him develop his talent. One day, during one of the improvised classes that Isabel taught the children, she approached Manuel with a knowing smile. "Manuel, I've noticed that you have a special gift for music," she said quietly, so as not to attract the attention of the others. "I would like to help you cultivate that talent if you allow me." Manuel, surprised and excited by the teacher's attention, nodded enthusiastically. "I would love that, Miss Isabel. Music is everything to me, it's what keeps me alive in this place." From that moment on, Isabel became Manuel's mentor and confidant. In their free time, she taught him the basics of music theory and helped him transcribe the melodies that formed in his mind. Manuel absorbed each lesson eagerly, feeling that he had finally found a purpose amid so much adversity. But the relationship between Manuel and Isabel did not go unnoticed by the other caregivers at the orphanage. Some viewed with suspicion the special attention the teacher gave the boy, while others simply disapproved of any show of affection toward the orphans. Rumors and gossip began to circulate, poisoning the already tense atmosphere of the place. One day, while Manuel and Isabel were working on a new song, one of the caregivers burst into the room, his face red with anger. "What do you think you're doing, Isabel?" he snapped, pointing at Manuel with disdain. "Wasting time with this freak instead of fulfilling your duties? That's enough, this has to stop." But Isabel was not intimidated by the threats. In an act of courage and generosity, she handed Manuel an old magazine she had found at the local market. "Look, Manuel," she said, pointing to the cover. "This is a famous singer, and he's holding a guitar like the one you dream of playing someday. I want you to keep this magazine so you never forget your dreams and know that there's a world beyond these walls." Manuel hugged the magazine to his chest, feeling that this simple gesture gave him the strength to keep going. But in the orphanage, hope and happiness were fleeting states. With the magazine Miss Isabel had given him as his most precious possession, Manuel spent hours staring at the image of the singer with his guitar, imagining himself in that place. That photograph became a symbol of his dreams and aspirations, a constant reminder that there was a world beyond the orphanage walls where his music could shine. One day, while Manuel and Diego were sitting in the orphanage courtyard sharing a meager lunch, Manuel decided to confide his biggest secret. "Diego, do you know what I want to be when I grow up?" he asked with a special sparkle in his eyes. Diego, intrigued, set aside his plate and looked at his friend with curiosity. "No, what do you want to be?" "I want to be a singer, like the one in the magazine Miss Isabel gave me," Manuel revealed, pulling the treasured publication from his clothes. "I want to travel the world and share my music with people, make them feel what I feel when I sing." Diego examined the image of the singer, and a smile spread across his face. "You know what, Manuel? I think you can do it. You have incredible talent." Manuel felt his heart swell with emotion at his friend's encouraging words. "Do you really think so, Diego?" "Sometimes it feels like an impossible dream, especially being stuck in this place." "Nothing is impossible if you fight for it," Diego affirmed with conviction. But not everything was rosy in the orphanage. When the other children found out about Manuel's dream, they mercilessly mocked him. "A famous singer? You don't make me laugh," they jeered. "No one would want to listen to a freak like you." Manuel tried to ignore the taunts, but each word stabbed his heart like a thorn. Life at the orphanage continued with its ups and downs and daily challenges. Manuel and Diego clung to their friendship like a lifeline in the midst of the storm, finding comfort and strength in each other's presence. However, fate had an unexpected twist in store that would test their unbreakable bond. One day, an unusual commotion took over the orphanage. A Canadian couple, the Johnsons, had arrived with the intention of adopting a child. The caregivers, eager to impress the visitors, hurried to tidy up the orphans and put on their best faces. Manuel and Diego watched the hustle from a corner, not getting their hopes up. They knew their chances of being chosen were slim, especially for Manuel with his unique appearance. The Johnsons toured the facilities, evaluating each child with a critical eye. When they reached Diego, something in his determined look and brave demeanor caught their attention. After a brief conversation, they made their decision. They wanted to adopt Diego. The news fell like a bucket of cold water on Manuel. His best friend, his soul brother, would be taken away from his side. Diego, for his part, was torn between the excitement of having a family and the pain of leaving Manuel behind. "I can't leave, Manuel," Diego said with tears in his eyes. "I can't leave you alone in this place. You're my best friend, my brother." Manuel, heartbroken but aware of the opportunity presented to Diego, took his hands and looked him in the eyes. "You have to go, Diego. This is your chance to have a family, to live a better life. You can't let it pass because of me." "But what will happen to you? Who will protect you when I'm not here?" Diego asked, his voice breaking. "I'll be fine," Manuel lied, forcing a smile. "I have Miss Isabel and my music. Besides, this isn't goodbye forever. I know we'll meet again someday when we've both fulfilled our dreams." With a heavy heart, Diego accepted the decision. The Johnsons took him away that same afternoon, not without promising Manuel they would take good care of his friend and do everything possible to keep in touch. Manuel watched Diego leave with a mix of sadness and envy. On one hand, he was happy for his friend, knowing he would have the chance at a better life, but on the other, he couldn't help but feel a deep loneliness at losing his closest companion. That night, while everyone celebrated Diego's adoption, Manuel sneaked off to his favorite corner of the orphanage, a small, dark room where he could be alone with his thoughts. There, he let the tears he had held back all day flow, allowing himself to feel the pain of separation. Diego's departure left a deep void in Manuel's life. His friend had been his rock, his constant support in the face of adversity, and now he found himself alone, facing the challenges of the orphanage without his battle companion. But Manuel was determined to move forward, clinging to the promise he had made to Diego and the hope of a better future. However, life at the orphanage was about to take a tragic turn. One day, while the children were going about their daily chores, a group of armed rebels stormed the premises. The caregivers, terrified, tried to protect the orphans, but the invaders' violence knew no bounds. In the midst of the chaos, Miss Isabel bravely stood between the rebels and the children, becoming a human shield to protect them. "Run, children, find a safe place," she shouted, her voice filled with desperation. Manuel, paralyzed by fear, watched as the rebels aimed their weapons at Miss Isabel. In an instant, the sound of gunfire echoed through the air, and the teacher fell to the ground, her lifeless body collapsing before the horrified eyes of the children. "No, Miss Isabel!" Manuel cried, tears streaming down his cheeks as he tried to run to her, but other children grabbed him, dragging him to an improvised hiding place as the rebels continued their attack. For endless hours, Manuel and the other orphans huddled in their refuge, trembling with fear and crying silently. The sounds of gunfire and screams mixed with the frantic beating of their hearts until finally, silence returned to the orphanage. When they emerged from their hiding place, the horror of the scene hit them hard. Miss Isabel's lifeless body lay in a pool of blood, her face frozen in an expression of determination and sacrifice. Around her, other caregivers and children had met the same fate, innocent victims of senseless violence. Manuel approached Miss Isabel's body, falling to his knees beside her. "Teacher, why? Why did this have to happen?" he sobbed, clutching her cold, lifeless hand. "You were all I had, my only hope in this place. What am I going to do now without you?" The tragedy left an indelible mark on Manuel's soul. The loss of Miss Isabel, his mentor and confidant, added to the pain of Diego's absence. In the days that followed, Manuel fell into a state of shock and despair. Music, which had once been his escape and solace, now felt bland and meaningless. What was the point of dreaming of a better future when reality was so cruel and unforgiving? But amid his pain, Manuel remembered Miss Isabel's words, her unwavering faith in him and his talent. "You can't give up, Manuel," she seemed to whisper in his ear. "Don't let the darkness extinguish your light." Thousands of miles away, in the United States, Elaine Clark was immersed in her own personal challenges. Since her college days, Elaine had been a passionate activist, fighting for the rights of the underprivileged and dreaming of making the world a fairer place. It was during those years of struggle and commitment that she met Antonio, a charismatic young man who shared her ideals. Antonio had been adopted by an American couple when he was just 5 years old, after losing his parents in the ethnic conflicts that ravaged his native African country. Despite growing up in a privileged environment, he never forgot his roots or the reality of so many children who, like him, had been left orphaned and destitute. Elaine and Antonio fell madly in love and, after graduating, decided to unite their lives in marriage. They both dreamed of forming a large and loving family where they could instill the values of compassion, justice, and solidarity. However, destiny had a harsh test in store for them. After several unsuccessful attempts to conceive a child, Elaine and Antonio decided to undergo medical tests. The results were devastating. Elaine was infertile. The news fell like a hammer blow on the young couple, who saw their dream of becoming parents vanish before their eyes. "What are we going to do now, Antonio?" Elaine asked, her voice breaking with emotion and frustration. "We always dreamed of having a large family, of giving our children all the love we received. How are we going to overcome this?" Antonio, with the wisdom and serenity that characterized him, took his wife's hands and looked into her eyes. "Elaine, the love we have to give does not depend on our ability to conceive biological children. There are so many children in the world who need a family, who yearn for the love and protection we can offer them." It was then that Antonio had an idea that would change their lives forever. "What if we adopt a child from my native country? We could give a home to a little one who has lost his parents, like I did. It would be a way to honor my roots and make a difference in the life of someone who truly needs it." Elaine, moved by her husband's proposal, felt a new purpose rise in her heart. "You're right, Antonio. Adoption is an act of love and generosity. If we can't have biological children, we'll open our home and our hearts to a child who longs for a family." So, Elaine and Antonio embarked on the most important journey of their lives. They decided to travel to Burundi, Antonio's birthplace, with the hope of finding the child destiny had reserved for them. When they arrived at the orphanage where Manuel was, something in the child's sad and deep gaze touched their souls. Despite his unique appearance, with the marks of vitiligo on his skin, Elaine and Antonio saw in him a special being full of potential and in need of love. "It's him, Antonio," Elaine whispered, tears in her eyes. "He's our son. I can feel it in my heart." Antonio, emotional and moved, nodded silently. Thus, with the adoption process underway and their hearts filled with hope, Elaine and Antonio prepared to embark on the greatest adventure of their lives, becoming the loving and understanding parents Manuel had always dreamed of having. The journey to the United States was a whirlwind of emotions for Manuel. On one hand, he felt the excitement of starting a new life far from the pain and tragedy that had marked his childhood in Burundi, but on the other, he couldn't help but feel a deep sadness at leaving behind everything he knew, including the memories of his parents and Miss Isabel. With his few belongings packed in a small suitcase, Manuel clung to the most precious treasures of his past: the photograph of his biological parents smiling and full of love, and the magazine Miss Isabel had given him with the image of the singer and his guitar on the cover. These items were the only tangible links he had left to those he had loved and lost. Upon arriving at his new home in the United States, Manuel was overwhelmed by the contrast between the opulence of his surroundings and the poverty he had known at the orphanage. Elaine and Antonio's house was spacious and welcoming, with bright rooms and comfortable furniture. For the first time in his life, Manuel had a soft bed to sleep in and toys to play with. However, the adaptation was not easy. Manuel, accustomed to the harshness of life at the orphanage, felt out of place in this world of comfort and abundance. Sometimes, he found himself hoarding food in his room, fearing it might run out at some point. Other times, he was startled by sudden noises or raised voices, recalling the horrors he had witnessed during the rebel attack. Elaine and Antonio, aware of the trauma Manuel had experienced, made every effort to provide him with all the love and understanding he needed. With patience and affection, they taught him to trust again, to feel safe and loved in his new family. "Manuel, we know all this is new to you," Elaine said gently as she helped him unpack his belongings. "But I want you to know that you are safe here. Antonio and I love you unconditionally, and we will do everything in our power to make you happy." Manuel, with tears in his eyes, threw himself into Elaine's arms, clinging to her like a lifeline in the midst of the storm. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered, surprising himself by using a word that had been buried in his past. "I love you and Dad Antonio too." Antonio, moved by hearing Manuel call him Dad, joined the hug, forming a circle of love and protection around the little boy. "We're here for you, son. We will always be your family, no matter what." Gradually, Manuel began to adapt to his new life. He learned to enjoy the little things, like walks in the park or family movie nights. He discovered the pleasure of reading and exploring, filling his mind with knowledge and his heart with dreams. As Manuel adapted to his new life in the United States, his passion for music became increasingly evident. Elaine, always attentive to the needs and desires of her adopted son, quickly noticed the spark in his eyes whenever he listened to a song or hummed a melody. One day, while Elaine was preparing dinner in the kitchen, she heard a soft and melodious voice coming from Manuel's room. Intrigued, she approached quietly and peeked through the partially open door. What she saw took her breath away. Manuel was sitting on the edge of his bed with Miss Isabel's magazine open on his lap, his fingers moving over an imaginary guitar as he sang a song Elaine had never heard before. The boy's voice was clear and emotional, filled with a passion and feeling that seemed impossible for someone his age. When the song ended, Elaine entered the room softly. "Manuel, that was beautiful," she said with a smile. "I had no idea you had such a special talent for music." Manuel, surprised at first, lowered his gaze shyly. "Thank you, Mom. Music is everything to me. It's what kept me alive at the orphanage, what gave me hope when I thought there was none." Elaine sat down next to him and put an arm around his shoulders. "Tell me more, son. What would it mean to you to be able to develop your musical talent?" Manuel's eyes filled with tears as he spoke. "It would mean everything, Mom. For as long as I can remember, I've dreamed of being a singer, of sharing my music with the world. I know it might sound silly, but I feel like it's my destiny, my way of honoring my parents and Miss Isabel." Elaine, moved by her son's passion and determination, made a decision right then and there. "Manuel, I promise you that I will do everything in my power to help you achieve your dream. If music is your passion, then I will support you every step of the way." And so, with Elaine's unconditional love and support, Manuel began his journey into the world of music. Elaine enrolled him in singing and guitar lessons, where the child's natural talent blossomed like a flower in spring. The teachers were amazed by Manuel's innate ability for music. His voice, rich and expressive, seemed capable of conveying emotions beyond words, and his fingers, agile and precise, tamed the guitar strings as if they were born to do so. As Manuel progressed in his studies, his confidence grew. He was no longer the shy and reserved child who had arrived in the United States but a budding young artist determined to leave his mark on the world. His talent did not go unnoticed in the music industry. Soon, producers and agents began knocking on the Clark family's door, eager to work with the young prodigy. But Elaine, determined to protect her son, ensured that Manuel would not be overwhelmed by the pressures of show business. "Remember, son, music is your passion, your way of expressing yourself. Never let anyone take that away from you. And remember, no matter what happens, your family will always be here to support you." The years passed, and Manuel delved fully into the world of music. At the tender age of 12, he had already mastered several instruments, and his voice had become an instrument in itself, capable of conveying deep emotions and moving anyone who listened. But it was his ability to compose songs that truly distinguished him as a prodigy. Manuel had an innate gift for creating catchy melodies and touching lyrics that seemed to spring from the depths of his soul. His songs spoke of love, loss, hope, and the strength of the human spirit, all from the unique perspective of a child who had lived through more than many adults could imagine. Soon, the most famous artists in the United States began seeking Manuel to write songs for them. Singers and bands of all genres, from pop to rock, were eager to have a composition by the young prodigy on their albums. Manuel found himself spending long hours in recording studios, working side by side with renowned producers and musicians. His tireless work ethic and boundless creativity earned him the respect and admiration of the music industry. "It's incredible," remarked a producer after a particularly intense recording session. "Manuel is only 12 years old, but he composes as if he had lived 1,000 lives. His songs have a depth and maturity rarely seen in adult songwriters." Despite his growing success, Manuel remained humble and focused on his passion for music. For him, composing was not about fame or fortune but about expressing the deepest emotions of his heart and connecting with others through his art. "When I write a song," he confessed to Elaine one night, "I feel like I'm honoring all the people who have been important in my life, my parents, Miss Isabel, Diego. It's like I can keep them alive through my music." Elaine, always proud of her son, gave him a warm hug, "And I'm sure they are smiling from heaven, Manuel. Your songs are a gift to the world, a way to share your light with others." But as Manuel's fame grew, so did the pressures of the industry. Agents and record executives began pressuring the young composer to produce more and more hits, often at the expense of his emotional well-being. There were times when Manuel felt overwhelmed, as if the music he loved so much had become a burden. In those moments of doubt, he turned to his family for support and guidance. "Remember, son," Antonio told him one afternoon after a particularly difficult argument with a record executive, "music is your passion, your way of expressing yourself. Don't let anyone take that away from you. You are an artist, not a hit-making machine." And so, at the tender age of 12, Manuel had become one of the most respected and sought-after songwriters in the United States. His music touched the hearts of millions, bringing a message of hope and resilience to every corner of the country. The years passed, and Manuel became a 17-year-old young man with a musical talent that had matured and blossomed like a strong, majestic oak. His tireless dedication and passion for music had led him to this crucial moment, his debut at a major concert, the first step on his path to achieving his dreams. The theater was filled to the last seat with an expectant and excited audience. Among the crowd were Elaine and Antonio, his adoptive parents, who watched him with pride and unconditional love. Also present were record executives, music critics, and other artists, all eager to witness the birth of a new star. But there was someone else in the audience, someone Manuel did not expect to see. In one of the back rows, a young man his age watched him with a knowing smile. It was Diego, his soul brother, who had traveled from Canada to witness this monumental moment. When Manuel stepped onto the stage, the theater fell into an expectant silence. Under the dazzling lights, his skin modeled by vitiligo seemed to glow with a light of its own, as if the stars had settled on him. With his guitar in hand and his voice ready to rise, Manuel closed his eyes for a moment, evoking the faces of those who had inspired him, his parents, Miss Isabel, and, of course, Diego. And then he began to sing. His voice, powerful and full of emotion, filled every corner of the theater. The songs he had composed, born from his heart and polished by years of dedication, came to life, enveloping the audience in a whirlwind of feelings. They spoke of love and loss, hope and resilience, and the beauty that can arise from the ashes of tragedy. The audience, captivated by his magnetic presence and undeniable talent, surrendered completely to the magic of his music. They applauded, cheered, and cried, deeply moved. In that moment, Manuel knew he had found his place in the world, that his destiny was intertwined with music in an unbreakable way. When the concert ended, the ovation was deafening. Manuel, with tears in his eyes and a radiant smile, thanked his audience with a bow. He had given his all on stage, and the audience's response was confirmation that his dream, the one he had shared with Diego years ago, was finally within reach. Backstage, the record executives rushed to congratulate him. "Manuel, that was incredible," one of them said, shaking his hand enthusiastically. "We want to offer you a record deal here and now. You have a bright future ahead of you." But before Manuel could respond, he heard a familiar voice calling out to him, "Manuel, brother." It was Diego, pushing through the crowd to hug his friend. The two friends, united by an unbreakable bond, embraced emotionally. Manuel, with a voice choked with emotion, whispered, "This is thanks to you, Diego. I would never have gotten here without your friendship, without your support. This victory is as much yours as it is mine." After the presentation, Diego shared with Manuel that he had found the announcement of Manuel's performance on social media and traveled from Canada to the United States to reunite with him. From that day on, the friends promised to always stay in touch. Manuel's career was taking off, and the dream he had shared with Diego years ago was becoming a reality. But beyond fame and success, Manuel knew that his true purpose was to use his music to touch hearts, inspire hope, and honor those who had guided him on his journey. At 24, Manuel's success in the music world opened doors he had never imagined. His voice and songs reached millions of people, touching their hearts and transforming their lives. But amid all the whirlwind of fame, Manuel never forgot those who had been his rock and unconditional support, his adoptive parents, Elaine and Antonio. One day, while resting in his luxurious apartment after an exhausting tour, Manuel made a decision. He wanted to show Elaine and Antonio how much they meant to him, how much he appreciated everything they had done for him since the moment they welcomed him into their home and hearts. With an excited smile, Manuel called his parents, "Mom, Dad, pack your bags. We're going on a trip to see the world together. I want to share with you everything I've achieved thanks to your love and support." Elaine, with tears of joy in her eyes, hugged her son through the phone. "Manuel, you don't have to do this. You know we love you and are proud of you no matter what." But Manuel insisted, "Please, let me do this for you. I want you to see the world through my eyes, to experience the joy and excitement of discovering new places together." And so, the family embarked on an extraordinary journey. They traveled to exotic countries, staying in the most luxurious hotels and living unforgettable experiences. Manuel showed them the places he had visited during his tours, sharing with them the stories and people he had encountered along the way. But the greatest gift came when they returned to the United States. Manuel, with a mischievous smile, took his parents to a luxury car dealership. "Mom, Dad, I want you to choose the car of your dreams. It's my way of thanking you for everything you've done for me." Antonio, wide-eyed, was speechless. "Manuel, this is too much. We can't accept such a gift." But Manuel, with a look full of love, insisted, "Please, let me do this for you. You gave me a home, a family, and unconditional love when I needed it most. This is just a small token of my gratitude." With tears in their eyes and hearts bursting with pride, Elaine and Antonio accepted their son's gift. They knew that beyond the luxury cars and exotic trips, the true treasure was the love they shared as a family. But life had another surprise in store for Manuel. One night, after an electrifying concert, he decided to relax at a nearby bar. There, among the crowd, his eyes fell on a beautiful and enigmatic woman. Her name was Carla, and from the moment their eyes met, Manuel knew he had found someone special. He approached her with his heart pounding. "Hi, I'm Manuel. Can I buy you a drink?" Carla, with a captivating smile, accepted, and so began a conversation that extended into the early hours of the morning, an instant connection that seemed destined to be. Manuel and Carla started seeing each other more often, stealing moments between Manuel's commitments and Carla's busy life as a lawyer. Each encounter was a spark of magic, a promise of something bigger and deeper. "Manuel, I've never met anyone like you," Carla whispered one night, nestled in his arms. "You're more than a famous artist, you're a beautiful and brave soul who has overcome so much." Manuel, his heart swelling with love, kissed her gently. "And you, Carla, are the missing piece in my life." Preparations for Manuel and Carla's wedding were in full swing. The couple radiated happiness and love, and their joy was contagious to everyone around them. Manuel, in the midst of the whirlwind of emotions, decided to take some time to organize his belongings before moving into the new home he would share with Carla. As he sifted through old boxes and photo albums, Manuel came across an image that took his breath away. It was a photograph of his biological parents smiling and embraced with a baby in their arms who could only be himself. With trembling hands, Manuel took the photo and examined it closely, absorbing every detail of the faces he barely remembered. At that moment, Antonio entered the room, curious to know what had captured his son's attention. Seeing the photo in Manuel's hands, his face turned pale, and his eyes filled with tears. "Dad, what's wrong?" Manuel asked, concerned by Antonio's reaction. "Do you know these people?" Antonio, with a voice choked with emotion, sat down next to Manuel. "Son, there's something your mother and I have wanted to tell you for a long time, but we never found the right moment." Manuel, his heart pounding, listened intently as Antonio revealed a secret that would change his life forever. "Manuel, the woman in that photo, your biological mother, she was my sister, which means you are my legitimate nephew." The revelation hit Manuel like a bolt of lightning. For years, he had longed to know more about his roots, about the family he had lost, and now he discovered that they had always been closer than he had imagined. "Why didn't you tell